working with, what is the saying that people say? You should never work with children or animals.
Yeah, I think it is.
Hi, I'm Alex.
And I'm Alice.
And we're both project managers at Esky.
Yeah, and today we're going to be talking about healthy lifestyles for families. So we were commissioned by Hull City Council's Healthy Lifestyles team to increase the access and online provision of healthy lifestyles team services, which include us mums, early years physical activity, healthy cooking on a budget by people in Hull who will benefit from it.
Yeah. So we developed Us Mums Need, which was a campaign that promoted sort of the benefits of the Us Mums service. So the campaign was created following some research that was conducted during lockdown, speaking with pregnant women and new mothers just to find out what challenges they faced and what sort of challenges there are in pregnancy and becoming into motherhood and what could sort of help them, I guess, and what would be able to support them in that way.
Yeah, because obviously becoming a mum in normal times is hard as it is, but let alone in a pandemic when you're isolated, you're on your own, you know people like going through the same thing, but you can't see them, you can't go speak to them, and it can just feel so lonely. People
say at the best of times when you have a baby, it can be the most lonely, especially for new mums, the most lonely time, because you've got this baby that can't communicate with you, you kind of just stuck, you can't really go anywhere, so let alone when you can't have any family to help you, or I can't even imagine how hard that is. But that's obviously a big part of why we did this research, and Hull City Council wanted to do something about it.
So what we actually did was we filmed emotional and uplifting interviews via Zoom with 3 new mothers who had taken part in the Us Mums sessions, which led to help them improve their physical and mental health. And to socialise with others who've been going through the same thing, like we mentioned, just similar life-changing experiences. The result was very inspirational. It was a very inspirational campaign, supporting with, and we had social media graphics and digital packaging materials to send out to partners as well, to send out to others who were in the same position, which was really helpful.
Yeah. I think just having them knowing that there were, like the mums knowing that there were other people that they could speak to just helped in itself, let alone with all the help that they were getting from professionals and things like that. So in addition to the Us Mums Need campaign, we also supported Healthy Lifestyles team in creating a book of healthy recipes for different communities. So we did a little series which was really cute, which featured local families and sort of young people helping their parents cook a meal and helping them recreate these recipes to get the whole family involved. Create as like a little activity you can do together. It doesn't have to just be, I need to cook tea again. It can be trying to get the kids involved. And showing that it can be something you can do as a family, which was really nice. It was really cute.
So working on this campaign, we came across a lot of lessons learned, and the lessons that we're going to run through now are particular lessons that we learned working on that particular section of the campaign.
Yeah.
So the first one being when it came to work on the recipe book, colour contrast matters. So when we first created the recipe book, we used muted colours, although the title might have looked fine to us. One person with, for example, colour blindness pointed out that the colours chosen made it harder for them to read, which of course we won't even think about, which is mad. So we changed the colour palette to make it more accessible to everyone who's able to access it and read it, which was something I don't think we've ever really come across before with our campaign. So it kind of made us realise
it's important.
It's important to make sure, obviously, as many people can access it as possible.
Yeah, definitely. So the next sort of little section was the recipe films. So what we learned from that is that working with, what is the saying that people say? You should never work with children or animals.
Yeah, I think it is.
But obviously in our experience with this, we had some really young sort of toddlers involved in helping with the recipes. And it was actually really rewarding rather than anything else. And it really made for some really nice videos to watch, and I think it would encourage people to want to do it with their little ones as well. So sort of the children were given some little tasks to do when they were doing the recipes, and they were sort of fully engaged in the activity, and it just made it sort of obvious that they do like doing things like that. There are things that you might not think young people like doing, But if you actually just give them little tasks to do,
Yeah.
they actually will want to get involved and help.
You
So
feel like they're helping.
yeah.
So the next lesson learned, we've briefly touched on, is for the Us Mums Need campaign. So like we said, all of the interviews were filmed during lockdown. It was created during the pandemic. So it's essential to be adaptable on projects. Like we said, all the filming needed to be done remotely. So instead of filming them in person, we had to do all the interviews via Zoom. But these turned out to be just as impactful, which was great, which was meant we could create enough content from these interviews to build the campaign. And it was the right time to help mums during lockdown, which is really nice. And I think mums seeing other mums be able to communicate via Zoom interviews, I mean, they probably think, oh, if they can do it, I can pick up the phone and speak to whoever. You know, it's not that. I think people think they're bothering a lot of people a lot of the time. Like if they're not going to meet them face to face with a planned out meeting, they're like, oh, I can't just pick up the phone. Like they could be in the middle of doing something. But it's just kind of putting that message across, like, you have people that are there for you, like, you know, just pick up the phone, speak to someone, regardless as to whether what's going on, pandemic or not. Like people are there to listen to you. Yeah.
So like a lot of the work we do, obviously the Us Mums Need campaign and the videos that we did were quite emotional. And one of our colleagues that did the interviews said that a big sort of lesson that they learned was making sure that when you're interviewing, listen. So sort of make sure that the person's finished speaking, they've said all they need to say, and that you're actually engaging with them in that way. It's very easy to sort of read from a script and be quite robotic, whereas when it's an emotional topic, it's important to really take in what that person's saying, because it can be so emotional, and they might be the only time that they've really spoken about it properly.
Exactly.
They've never maybe been asked these questions. So it's just really important to listen. And I think a specific example was that there was a single parent that had no family who had to deal with sort of a life-changing experience of having the baby on her own during a pandemic. So obviously that was so emotional already. And she'd already suffered a miscarriage sort of near the beginning of the pandemic, and she had to go through that grieving process as well, which was already a really difficult time. So I think when our colleague was carrying out that interview, they just had to be so sort of make a real point of listening and showing that you're human. You're there to get that message across to help other people. You're not there just to get a story. You're there to help other people through sort of the voice of the person you're interviewing. So,
and I think with interviews like that, it's really key not to have a structure, just to let the conversation flow naturally, like ask questions about little bits that you want to know more about, that they feel comfortable expanding on, instead of just listening to something and being like, right, next question, next one.
And if there's a question that's coming up in your script, because obviously if there's a question that's coming up in what you've planned to ask and you think actually they've got really, you just have to really play it by ear to be sensitive. It's obviously quite hard for this person to talk about if it's an emotional interview. So just being empathetic again, just making sure that they're comfortable. And it can be hard, but
it can.
But it's for a positive, it's for a good cause. You're helping other people, and I think that's why obviously they want to get involved in the first place. So it's really important.
And I suppose, like we said, in this case it was a single parent. They probably really, really do appreciate someone to talk to and share that story with, because if they've got no family nearby, they haven't got anyone to speak to. It's just nice being there for them.
So I think we've covered the main lessons learned for that one. So thank you for watching, and we will pop links in the description.
Thank you.
Bye.